Uh, and I'll touch on our pollution laws, how we came up, or how some of them came into place, and what our field response team looks like. So as Vivian mentioned, there were some things that happened in the past that got us some attention and some concern as to how to respond and handle large oil spills. So in '89, the Exxon Valdez up in the Prince William Sound spilled 11 million gallons of oil into the ocean there. The next year, the American Trader down in Huntington Beach spilled about 416,000 gallons. And down in Southern California, a lot of that oil went ashore. A lot of people lived down there, were impacted, and there just wasn't a great program in place to deal with a large event. Where to start? How do you clean it up? Who's supposed to clean it up? What do we do with the stuff that we've cleaned up? So in the early '90s, the Office of Spill Prevention and Response was created, and that was a big part of the Limpert-Keene-Seastrand Oil Spill Prevention and Response Act. And so with the creation of OSPR, Office of Spill Prevention and Response, we got an administrator that is ultimately responsible for being in charge of large cleanups that are affecting waters of the state. In 2014, the marine section, so we were only marine with OSPR from the 90s to 2014, we went inland. So instead of just being focused on marine related oil spills, now we cover the whole state. And so that went into some of our pipelines, crude by rail, inland facilities. So now OSPR covers the whole state and is really in charge of how to prevent spills, how to respond to spills, and we now have a program to react to large spill events. Recently, renewable fuels are on the table, and from AB 148. So we are now into looking at renewable fuels. And again, our responsibility is the primary state agency to respond to spills. So think of CHP, a large accident on the highway. CHP is who handles that. A large spill into waterways, California Fish and Wildlife, OSPR handles that. And if we can go to the next slide. So what does that cover? So as some of those pictures probably make you think, large tank ships, large inland facilities, refineries, production areas, pipelines that have large spans, that cover a lot of areas of our state. And then that bottom right, the railway systems. In California, we have a lot of railways, and think of the Feather River Canyon, steep canyon, beautiful waterway, and the only good spot for those tracks is right on the edge of the river. So when we have trains pulling large amounts of oil right next to the waterway, we can have some major problems. So yeah, we're focused on all these areas of potential large spill events and prevention and response. So the mandate to respond. So with the creation of OSPR as the lead state agency for oil spills, protecting water quality is our top priority. That's what we focus on. We understand, obviously, human life is the first priority, and so if there's an event that has multiple issues and is an emergency event, human life obviously comes first, and then we really dive into figuring out what we can do to mitigate or start working on the spill event. So let's see. So in our response roles, we often work with multiple agencies and entities and really try to focus on a unified command. So if we have a large event that has multiple players, the incident command structure would likely be a representative from the responsible party, a representative from the federal entity, representative from the state, which would be likely a game warden or lieutenant, and then a representative from the local government. So we like I said, like to have that unified command and make sure everyone's on the same page. We're all talking to each other. We're using the incident command system, or ICS, which really helps streamline the process because everyone in that unified command is trained on ICS and knows that there's certain paths to take, and kind of everyone has their role and knows what that role is and can really just work together as a team. On the investigation side, the game warden or the law enforcement officer with OSPR wears a lot of hats, but depending on the size and scope of the spill, could wear all the hats. Could be the investigator, could be the incident commander, could be directing the show for cleanup, and then gets the joy of writing that case, being the case officer. And I think, unless there's anything else on this one, Cindy, I think I'm going into the next one. So our field response team is a game warden, or the wildlife officer, oil spill prevention specialist, OSPS, and an environmental scientist, or ES. And we get activated generally from a notification to OES. So if a spill comes in and it's petroleum related and has an impact or a potential impact to waters of the state, there is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week on-call team that receives that notification. If it's business hours, it goes to our spill desk, a dispatcher that notifies the team of a incoming spill. If it's after hours, it goes to our police dispatch, who is it's run by state parks. So our police radio dispatchers would then reach out to this on-call team of the 3 field responders. And next slide, please. So the wildlife officer, the game warden, statewide peace officer, we generally get engaged with any California code. We try to focus on fish, game, and environmental related law, but this question comes up a lot. We can pull people over, we can make arrests, we deal with a variety of law enforcement related situations just in our normal job of checking hunters and anglers and responding to spills. We fill the role of the incident commander and the state on-scene coordinator. And like I said, we often are the investigator and the case officer. So in the picture, that's a game warden likely pulling a sample from, I'm guessing, a bilge release. And so he would grab that sample, take it to our petroleum chemistry lab, where they would analyze the sample and tell us what it is. And if we had a source sample and a recovered sample from the spilled area, the lab would be able to tell us that these are in fact the same product, which is helpful for us to determine who's at fault or who the spill came from, a specific vessel, a pipeline. Our lab is pretty good at being able to identify what the source is and if it matches our response sample. And we're the case officer. We take that case from getting the notification, responding on scene, supervising the cleanup, and then if there's a report that's going to, say, the district attorney for potential criminal charges. We write the report, submit it to the district attorney, and walk it all the way through the paths through the courts. And next slide, please. The environmental scientists. Again, one of the 3 field responders. They often can wear a lot of hats too, and I will go down the list on the right there. They are often the environmental unit leader, even within the unified command. They have a lot of experience with all the aspects of that environmental unit. Could be the wildlife branch director, looking at resources at risk, which is where I really rely on them on a response in the field. They can generally tell me what the problems are going to be. So if there's a spill in a specific waterway, they can kind of look downstream and in the immediate area and see if there's any sensitive areas, any species that we know are there that could be impacted or threatened or endangered. And so I really rely on the environmental scientists to let me know what the big problems are. You know, are we just looking to clean up the oil, or do we need to protect certain areas that that the oil is going to protect some of our sensitive sites? They often head up the shoreline cleanup and assessment SCAT team, are integral in cleanup monitoring and assessment, and then determining those cleanup endpoints. So how clean is clean? You know, I work the I-80 corridor with a lot of big rig accidents, and so there's certain areas where big rigs like to crash, and you could have kind of a parfait of 5 years of different spills. So how clean is clean? We're looking at a gutter on the side of I-80. It's not going to be, you know, showing zeros across the board for everything removed. So the environmental scientists can look at some baseline information and figure out what the endpoints need to be. And next slide, please. And then the third member of our party of field responder is the oil spill prevention specialist, OSPS. They come from a variety of backgrounds, but generally we have folks from the Coast Guard, folks from industry, either as working at a facility, or even coming from the oil spill cleanup contractors in Osro. So they, again, wear a lot of hats, but are the initial site safety officer. So if the field team of 3 is responding to, say, a jet fuel tanker went off the road, which I think that top picture is from, I'm going to rely on the OSPS to kind of tell me what we need to be aware of just walking up to the scene. Can we walk up to the scene? What kind of product are we looking at? You know, is it safe to get close enough to get a sample? Do we need the fire department to suit up in full SCBAs to clear the scene? So site safety officer is huge. They also liaison with the operations staff, kind of head up air monitoring initially, and then confirm that adequate air monitoring is taking place during the response. A huge part that I rely on them for is release quantification. Depending on what the product is, what container it came from, and what cleanup efforts took place, how much other oil was recovered, they can take all those numbers and give me a number that says, you know, say this tank held 3,000 gallons, it spilled, and over 4 days, 1,000 gallons was recovered. So 2,000 gallons was lost to the environment. So if a criminal case comes of this due to some negligence or something, that number comes into play as what was the impact, right? You had an amount spilled, an amount cleaned up, but what was the impact that was lost to the environment or unrecoverable and potentially impacted and polluted our water? They look at the causation. You know, what was the failure? Was it a human or mechanical failure? What caused the release? When we get into salvage operations, raising a boat, Again, kind of wearing that safety hat, but also having the knowledge from maybe a past career on the intricacies of salvage operations. That's definitely my right-hand man to make sure it's going smoothly, safely, and not going to cause a bigger problem by trying to raise a boat that, you know, maybe it flips over when they raise it and causes a whole nother spill. So yeah, like I mentioned, they come from maritime, pipeline, and hazmat expertise. So kind of a jack of all trades. So with that 3-person team of our field responders, kind of cover all the bases and work together as a team to figure out what's the best response to this situation that we got notified about. Next slide, please. And again, on that notification process, game wardens and our law enforcement officers are proactive. We go to areas where spills have happened before. We try to be on the highways during storm events, just anticipating potential big rig spills. But we can't be everywhere all the time, and we don't know where all the spills happen. So the notification that comes by calling OES goes to us as immediately as possible, so we know where a spill has occurred. So generally anybody can make an OES report. The Office of Emergency Services mans a 24/7 phone number, and you call in, they're going to prompt you with questions. What's the product? Where is it? What happened? Is anybody injured? It's really simple questions that if you're on scene or you're aware of what the spill is, it's just really answering the questions. And then they will generate this OES report, which is on the right. That's what it looks like. And it generates a control number, that top right Cal OES number. So then we get notified either through our spill desk or our police dispatcher. Sometimes it's a direct call from some of our, our allied agencies, fire, police, environmental health. Often Coast Guard will have some knowledge about a spill before an official notification comes in. So we really emphasize making the notification to OES or NRC, whichever one is relevant. Often it's both. Then we can get the FRT, our field response team, notified, and start the communication as to where is it, what is it. Do we need to go on scene? Can we make a phone call to who is on scene to see what we're looking at and start to triage that incident? So depending on the size and scope of the spill or release, you might get all 3 field responders. You might get 0. It might be a phone call that we can make to, say, the harbor master that has already deployed boom, has contacted the vessel owner, and has a salvage, secured for the following day. We might not show up that day. We might come the next day just to make sure that the information that was provided to us is accurate, and in that particular scenario, the salvage is taking place. Okay, no, that's good. Thank you, Cindy. Any questions? I'm happy to answer. I think in the chat is the best, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan. So great information, and this is the perfect opportunity for you guys to start asking your questions while we move into the other component of the agenda. So again, what we just covered is the California oil spill response structure, how the Unified Incident Command gets activated, the role that is super important that federal and state agencies play, and also counties and cities, and some spill notification information. Any questions that you guys have at this point? And again, we started from a bird's eye view perspective just to orient you and give you even more context in terms of how the state operates. Feel free to unmute yourself or include the question in the chat, and I'm happy just to read it to the team. We just check if I see any hands on. No. Any up? No. Okay, I see one question in the chat. Let me just see. That's Cindy. Who pays for the spill? I was like, what? So go ahead. Is that a question you're asking, Cindy, to the team? Just to start the conversation. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important for, I don't know if Ryan, do you want to cover who actually pays for the spill?
I can, yeah.
Sure.
It's kind of case by case. If there is a responsible party, a big rig company or a vessel owner or a pipeline operator, the responsible party should be the person that pays for that response. And depending on where the case goes, there may be penalties or fines, but there is a fund through OSPR that is available to either an unknown responsible party where we don't know whose boat it is. Maybe the truck and trailer were destroyed in the crash, and we don't have any license plate or VIN information. We have funds available to for emergency response to start paying for a contractor to begin the cleanup process. We can lean on our allied agencies, our federal partners. Coast Guard has similar funds available. They can federalize the incident. EPA has stepped in. They can also federalize and provide funds. And I think I saw something in the chat there. Does the responsible party have insurance? Definitely. That would be a great way to go. And in my experience with big rig accidents, they carry insurance to protect their product and respond to spilled product. So ideally, the responsible party either steps up or is encouraged to start paying for the response. If that's not an option, we can generally open a fund through state or federal funds and start the process. Again, still looking for that responsible party to eventually pay for it. But it's very fluid, and in an emergency response, a lot of people are doing a lot of things, and we're all trying to get the spill cleaned up. So the ultimate answer of who pays for it often comes days or weeks later, after the paperwork has been filed, the actual invoice comes in from the contractor, and we work within the state and with our other partners to work on that. But so yeah, I'm sorry, it varies, but ideally the responsible party, but that's not always the case.
Thank you, Ryan. And we have another question from Julia in the chat that says, does OSPR respond to pipeline spills? And would OSPR respond to both the groundwater soil impact as well as the surface water impact?
Great question. Yes. So there are other entities that regulate pipelines. We do not regulate pipelines, but take the oil spill from Refugio in 2015, I think. That was a large pipeline spill that directly impacted the ocean. So we responded to that because we had a lot of oil going into state waters, but we worked with other entities and agencies that had the regulatory authority on a pipeline. So depending on where the pipeline spill is, if it's going to, so this is part two of the question, if it's going to soil only, we would probably be notified and be engaged with who's responding. But if it's only going to soil and or groundwater, which was part of that question, we would likely be a supporting role until we confirmed that no state water was being impacted. So groundwater would go to the water board. Waters of the state is defined as any surface water. So again, we would probably be notified and provide a supporting role and make sure no waters of the state surface water was being impacted, and then help out how we could with the other agencies involved with regulation of pipeline.
Brian, does that also include dry stream beds?
Yes, it,
Thank you.
so, I mean, think of looking at your Apple phone map or your Google map where it's not the surface terrain. You'll see creeks, right? You'll see blue lines that indicate a creek. And maybe you go there in the summer and you see there's no water there. I'm looking at the map that says there should be a creek here. So we take that to mean it is a creek. At some point there will be water in here. So say a spill goes into it and nobody cleans it up, as soon as it rains, that creek will be flowing again, and that water will be, or that oil will be pushed down, likely to a larger water body and impact that area. So dry creek beds are included in areas that we want to see cleaned up, and ideally before water hits it again.
All right, thank you so much, Ryan. And of course, we're going to have more opportunities for future questions. Thank you, Ryan, again, and Cindy as well. And now we're going to move into the next section, which is this toolkit, which I'm going to be presenting. So this is one of the handouts that you receive, which looks like this. And I wanted to walk you through what you're receiving in that packet, because it's a very good toolkit that we put together with input provided, as I mentioned to you already at the beginning of the workshop, from federal, state, county agencies, as well as representatives from yacht clubs and private and public marinas. So looking at the toolkit that we share with you as a handout, and this morning again in the chat, the first 2 pages include information about why we put together the packet, some of the content, and in addition to that, our contact information, as well as recommended trainings for you and your staff, including the first responder awareness and the first responder operation trainings. The following page from your toolkit shows the list of resources to get information during an oil spill event that happens outside of your facility. Just think about the one that unfortunately we experienced a couple of years ago in Orange County or the Costco Busan. This is the kind of list of resources we want all of you to have handy somewhere in your office to get information about the latest and greatest in terms of the trajectory of the oil or whatever the Incident Unified Command is providing to all of us via OSPR, because again, OSPR is the state agency in charge of the responding at the state level. We recommend you, and that's why one of the questions in the poll was, do you guys know who your County Office of Emergency Services is? It is very important for all of you to make sure that you establish that two-way communication. It is important that you know who your County Office of Emergency Services is, as well as they know who you are, where you are, among others. Make sure that when you communicate with your county, that you also confirm that you are part of the county office of the county oil spill contingency plan. How can you identify your current County Office of Emergency Services? You use your favorite browser, just the keywords that we're giving you as an example. And then please make sure that you do that and that you're part of your county oil spill contingency plan. This is very, very important. And this is one of the main messages we want you please to take today. In addition to that, we recommend you 2 additional resources, which are to check the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Office of Spill Prevention and Response Cal Spill Watch website. Hopefully you have it bookmarked. Thanks to this work, OSPR has created a specific section for marinas and yacht clubs where the toolkit that you're receiving today as part of the workshop is also uploaded there. And in addition to that, make sure that you have that you follow OSPR via Twitter. They are pretty good on keeping the public up to date as long as the information is available. So again, these are resources for you to keep handy in case of a spill that happens outside of your facility. We also included in the packet the frequently asked questions about the OSPR spill response equipment grant. As you remember, we asked you at the beginning of the workshop if you knew, and a lot of you didn't have any clue about these grants. Based on the agenda, this is one of the topics that Cindy Murphy is going to be covering later on, but we decided to put in this packet those frequently asked questions where you are going to learn about what is the grant about, who can apply, the training that is involved, what kind of equipment is provided. And as you can see, mainly this grant applies for public agencies, and we give you some examples there, but we know that today we have a bunch of people who are private entities, and Cindy is going to talk about later on how you can partner in order to potentially have access to these grants. So everything will be covered later on. We are also including in your packet the current list of response equipment grantees in this packet, and we have the link that of course is active in the PDF that you received, as well as the response equipment location map and contact list. This is very important, excuse me, because it is important that you guys start getting the sense of community, that you know what your neighboring marina or yacht club has in terms of a spill response equipment in case you guys need to respond. We have a couple of situations like the Costco Busan. A lot of people didn't know what kind of materials to have or when to deploy the boom or whatever. It was like a difficult situation, but throughout these years we have learned a lot, and this is why we put together not only the packet but also the workshops. This list, again, doesn't show or reflect all the equipment response material that are available in your county. That's why we recommend you, again, to check with your neighboring marinas and yacht clubs. And in addition to that, we include as a resource the OSROs, which are the oil spill response organizations. These are organizations that respond to oil spills that have been evaluated through OSPR. And we are including the resource for you right there. Another component of the packet that we want to highlight to all of you is the spill notification and emergency contact numbers resource phone tree. When we had these workshops put together in the past and talking to marinas and yacht clubs, we know that you guys have tons of different phone lists that are everywhere in your facility. This is a very good template for you to use and to place in different parts of your marina or your yacht club or your harbor, and make sure that you review it every 6 months to a year, making sure that you have the latest and greatest phone numbers. These resource phone tree include the required notification in case there's a spill, and also the recommended notification. So we included these phone numbers there, going from the required phone numbers to recommended, including the Coast Guard in the different sectors. We are also including in this template for you to include who is in charge, and if you are, as a marina or yacht club operator, are not active the day of a spill happen, the second in command, so you have all those phone numbers there. In addition to that, we're recommending you to have handy the boating facilities procedures. For example, if you're a public agency, sometimes you need to notify your mayor or your county officials, among others. So make sure you have that list handy and in a very simple way. If they are oiled wildlife, we're including the 2 resources for you, phone numbers as well as websites. And we also suggest, depending on where you are, to have the active list of salvaging companies, as well as the additional divers if needed, vessel assist, and also nearby boatyards. Again, very important, simple list for you to have handy and for all of your staff to get to know where that list is and for you to review every 6 months to a year. We also included the information needed to report as an oil spill. As Ryan mentioned, there's a bunch of information that it needs to be collected, hopefully, and more efficiently before you do the reporting. So this is actually the typical information that the National Response Center will be asking you to report. So have this handy, prepare the information before you call. And most importantly, make sure that you give as your contact information a cell phone number, because probably you will be walking around the marina. So it's good for you to be able to be reachable by authorities if it's needed. Ryan also mentioned that during an oil spill, the agency in charge of responding to oil spills in marine waters is the Office of Spill Prevention and Response, and they operate under the guidance and direction of the Incidents Unified Command. And working under that command, OSPR can assist the state and local agencies to recover the response cost. In these two handouts, as part of your toolkit, we're talking about the third-party claim process for state and local agencies. But in addition to that, the third-party claim process, as you can see in the right-hand side of your slide, for private entities. This handout will explain to you the funds that are available, the reimbursement procedure, the type of documentation that is required, as well as the cost that can be reimbursed. In the following page, we included a sample of the cost estimate that you can recover, again, depending on a case-by-case basis and the situation. But it includes, for example, personal costs, travel expenses, response equipment, among others. And the last component of the toolkit includes the spill plan template. That's why we ask you at the beginning of the workshop if you have one in place. And we want to highlight a couple of things that are very important, especially for those marinas that do not have a spill plan in place, or also the yacht clubs. Even if your facility doesn't have a spill plan, a spill prevention control and countermeasure plan, it is important that you have one. A lot of the marinas sometimes don't even pay attention to these, or sometimes the yacht clubs, but remember that you have vessels that have engines and there's a potential opportunity for spills, or you may be having a spill that is coming from outside of your marina. For those of you who don't remember, the spill prevention control and countermeasure plan is required, for example, for fuel docks. So you will have to have one file on an annual basis with your Certified Unified Program agency, or for those facilities, as you can see at the bottom of this particular piece of paper that is included in your toolkit, that has above ground combined oil storage capacity of over 1,320 gallons, or completely buried storage capacity underground of over 42,000 gallons. But regardless of your capacity, please always have a spill plan in place. And here we are including for you the different recommendations in case there's a on the water incident, or also on land incident. Also what to do in case if it's gasoline that is a spill, or if it's not gasoline, even if you have, for example, like Ryan mentioned, a spill created by bilge contaminated. So these are the kind of things that is important for your facility to develop. And also review, as I mentioned already, and let me highlight it again, like your phone tree every 6 to a year, or to review with your staff. We also recommend you to not only have spill response plans, but emergency plans for different situations. For example, for health emergency, fire emergency, earthquakes, floods, among others. And those plans should be in an area accessible to the entire staff, easy to handle, easy to read, easy to update in a bright folder. So make sure that you also review that with your staff every 6 months to a year. Those plans should have, for example, information about the site plan, where your valves are, your pipes, your parking, your hydrants. In addition to that, what kind of a storm drain you have in your facility, parking lot drains. You can get that information from your city or county. Those plans should also include, for example, a spill response inventory list including where the spill materials are, how to access, if you have a key, where that key is, if the key is working, what kind of a spill response you have in place, vendors that provide that to you, and vendors also to help you to dispose of that once it's used. We included a handout for you about the recommended response equipment. And we included right here, as you see in this slide, that it is ideal to have at least 2 times the length of the largest vessel of boom to contain a spill, even to consider a more quantity. And this is the importance of making sure that you also share that information with your neighboring marina or yacht club. So make sure that you do that, please. The response plan should also include the actions that should take place. In addition to that, the personnel that is involved in every response plan and what role they have to play. And again, their current and latest phone numbers. The toolkit also includes a reminder for all of you, because we know that you know this, that it is illegal to use detergents or soaps or emulsifiers in case of an oil spill. So let's make sure that you remember that. And this packet is found in the website that you can see here from Cal Spill Watch website. We have, thanks to this effort, created a specific tab for marinas and yacht club, as you can see right here. And in addition to that, you will find other information, and this information will be updated, let's say if there's a spill, when the information is available. Just to wrap up this section, we wanted to remind you that based on federal and state laws, or oil spill laws, there's a dedication of a spill response resources to 3 main priorities in the state. The first one is the protection of human health and safety, where you can find examples such as, for example, power plant intakes or drinking water intakes. The second priority is the protection of natural resources, for example, wetlands, lagoons, threatened and endangered habitats. Those 2 are the most important priorities in terms of a spill response because of the long-term impact of the spill and a recovery if there's one. And the third priority are mainly boating facilities like you guys, harbors, marinas, and yacht clubs, because they are economic sensitive sites. So that's something that it is important to keep in mind. Remember that prevention is the cheapest way to control pollution, and that it is important that you keep the 2-way communication with your county representatives, that you should be part of your county oil spill contingency plan. So if something happened, you will be part of this notification. Let's say that if there's a spill happening outside of your facility, make sure that you reach out to your nearby facilities and keep these resources up to date. We want to also invite you to participate in the different contingency plan meetings, for example, for the Bay Area and Delta. If you want to participate in those meetings where you get to talk to other people interested from the industry, federal, state, and local agencies, NGOs, among others, you can contact Kevin Reed, and in the follow-up email after this workshop, we can send you that information. For other facilities that are outside the Bay Area and the Delta, that are, for example, here that I see you guys are present, like Central Coast and even Southern California, please make sure you can contact Kevin so he can put you in touch with those specific committees. OSPRA also has a drill calendar that is important if you want to participate with some exercises, so you can go and see how the oil spill structure works in our state with the interaction with the federal and state, and of course, county and cities. So let me stop there for a sec before we go into a break and see if you guys have any questions about what we just covered, which was first the oil spill structure, and then the packet that we have put together for you guys to make sure that you bring your facility and your staff up to date in terms of a spill response, what to do in case of a spill outside of your facility or inside of your facility. So let me see, I have a couple of questions here in the chat. Vivian, I am understanding that my club, for example, should have a spill plan in addition to the one to the marina. Yes, it is important that since you guys, yacht clubs, have, you know, tenants who are your boaters and you're dealing with boats, it is important and highly recommended that every single facility has its own spill plan and also your own emergency plans, and you keep those up to date. In addition to that, Wendy's saying, can you send out the slides so that we have all those links? Yes, we'll send you also the link to the PowerPoints, and I'm also recording these workshops, as you probably know already, and we will be posting that in our YouTube channel so you can have access to that information as well. And I'll send you also a follow-up email with these links so you have it in your inbox, super easy to access. Any questions about the two sections that we just covered before we go into our 10-minute break? All right, so it seems that you guys don't have any questions right now. So I'm going to set up the timer for our 10-minute break, and please come back at almost 11:10 so we can continue with the workshops. Feel free to leave your camera off as well as your microphone off, and we will be back in 10 minutes. wanted to make sure that everybody's aware. We have 5 more minutes approximately to go before we reconvene. Thank you. Okay, I want to invite everybody to start coming back. We have 3 more minutes to go for our break. Okay. I want to make sure that everybody is back. I hope you had a great stretch and break. And so right now we are going to switch gears and talk to you about case studies, lessons learned, and best practices. And I want to turn the presentation over to our colleague, Bob Chetzi, who will be leading these discussions. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you. As Vivian pointed out, my name is Bob Chetzi. I'm with the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Office of Spill Prevention and Response, and my title is an oil spill prevention specialist, which would lead most people to think that once an oil spill has taken place, I failed. And in part that's true, but you can lose the battle and not lose the lesson. And so in the response role, our job is to make sure that it doesn't get worse before it gets better to the extent that we can. And I'd like to go ahead and share with you a case study here. We'll tell you, this is a real life case. Anyway, I want to share with you something that happened and kind of get you thinking about what could have been done better, what could have been worse. So, and why is it not advancing on me?
Make sure that you click on the screen, Bob, so you can.
Okay, that might be it. Okay, there we go. And
I think you have to stop because you didn't share the sound when you were sharing the screen. So you have to stop sharing. And when you share again, make sure that you check the in the share screen, the share sound.
try this one more time.
No worries.
Are you hearing it?
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Your audio.
When you share the screen, Cindy, in the lower part, it says share the sound. So that's the part that needs to. In Zoom, when you share the screen, as soon as you click share screen, it will pop up a window. In the lower left corner, it says share sound. That's the one that you have to click. We'll make it work, guys. No worries.
Hold on. No matter, sorry. I'm looking where it says share. Yeah. There it is. And there.
Of petroleum products or hazardous fluids that may be on the water surface.
An inspector with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
You can start from the beginning and increase.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, hold on, give me a minute here. Sorry about that.
Thank you, everybody, for your
Yes.
patience here.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Contractors are still here working in the dark to recover this boat that sank and to clean up that fuel. We're told that the boat holds 250 gallons.
There we go. Oh my God.
Contractors are still here working in the dark to recover this boat that sank and to clean up that fuel. We're told that the boat holds 250 gallons of fuel and that it's unlikely all of that spilled into the marina. Still, a lot of it did, and it spread far. This video shows the moment a large boat caught fire last night in Alameda.
At about 10 p.m., we had a report of a boat fire here at the marina. Alameda Fire Department responded.
No one was hurt and the cause is unknown, but the boat did sink. It also caused diesel fuel to spill and spread throughout the marina. Liz Williams lives in a houseboat nearby.
This morning I walked out my door at about 10 in the morning and was just inundated with a fuel smell. When I looked at the water, there was a rainbow sheen all over it. I could see that fuel was just really covering most of the water.
Video from Sky 7 shows the fuel spreading from Alameda all the way to the Oakland estuary.
It is an active incident with the Coast Guard, and they're doing their best to mitigate any of the runoff, any of the flotation of petroleum products or hazardous fluids that may be on the water surface.
An inspector with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife describes the spill as minor to moderate.
What you can see on the water is kind of deceptive. A little bit of oil in water goes a long way, and it spreads out very quickly.
He said it's hard to collect this amount of fuel and that the most effective cleanup is natural evaporation. Williams feels more can and should be done.
We're in this climate change reality. It goes somewhere. It drops down into the water. It evaporates into the air. It goes somewhere. It's not like this becomes a non-event. And that's what I'm finding difficult about the explanations.
And we are told that the boat owners are cooperating and are paying for the cost of this cleanup as is required of them. The Department of Fish and Wildlife says that so far they have seen no impact on wildlife.
Okay, so we know a little bit about what happened here. We'd like to look at what could have been done better and how things could have been worse. First of all, what could and should have been done and by whom? Obviously, as the fire took place at night, the owners of the vessel, in this particular case, were preparing for a longer voyage. They had topped off their fuel tanks, and in preparing for the voyage, they were taking measures to dry out the interior cabin of the vessel with a space heater, and something went wrong. The boat caught fire and burned to the waterline, releasing all that fuel. At the time, of course, the fire department, it was focused on suppressing the fire, keeping it from spreading to other vessels, and being concerned about human life and safety. As it turns out, the fuel that spilled, the lady that was speaking with the reporter in the video, was a resident of a houseboat community adjacent to the marina. This is the marina where the boat caught fire, and adjacent is a houseboat community up here. Like she said, she was inundated with the smell. I can attest to the fact that the sheen was all throughout the houseboat docks, and it was kind of overwhelming. But the fire department did do a walkthrough with air monitoring devices and determined that even though it was notably present, the level of vapors did not rise to the level of a health concern. But how about booming, whether it be the barrier booming, the yellow stuff that you see on the left, or the use of absorbents, the absorbent booms and absorbent materials that you see in the middle, or any kind of shoreline cleanup? Who would be responsible for that? And what would they need to accomplish the tasks? You heard it just said earlier that responsible parties responsible for a release are on the hook to pay for the response. That doesn't mean that the boat owners would have all of this type of material. So you have to question whether your facility, your yacht club, your marina, your harbor or port has the right kind of materials to respond to a spill. And you saw the level of contamination, how far that fuel and that sheen had spread. I'm going to go back a couple of slides and show you, if the objective were to keep the sheen out of the houseboat community, to stretch some boom out this far, for instance, to keep it out of the houseboat community, and of course a boat to pull the boom, a place to anchor the boom. These are all things that have to be considered. And who would do all of this? Most of the time, the decontamination of boats, decontamination of facilities are undertaken by contractors, but there are some first aid efforts that can be undertaken, like in the picture in the lower right-hand corner, by marina staff. Again, if a boom were able to be deployed, and again, the fire department's going to be engaged in fire suppression activities, so you can't expect them to make this their priority. But if one operates a marina and you're cognizant of the exposures that the neighboring facilities present, maybe this should be in your plan, a place to anchor boom, a way to deploy it, and a method to do so safely. Again, the presence of a plan is only as good as the currency of a plan. To have a plan in place is great. To set it on a shelf and allow it to collect dust makes it worthless. Periodically pull the plan out, make sure the contacts in there are correct and timely, and make sure that other people, such as your neighbors, the local response agencies, the Office of Emergency Services, are aware of that plan. Okay? And any questions so far on any of this? Okay, so hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and proceed forward. If it happens to you, a vessel sinks or has sunk in your facility, what is appropriate to do? Think of the 4 C's: communicate, contain, control, and clean up. Communicating involves making those initial calls. If you don't call for help, you're not going to get any help. Nobody's going to be coming to your rescue and taking care of things. A fuel spill, when a vessel sinks or goes down in a facility, becomes a public health threat. And so 911 is going to be your public safety access point. You contact them, you give them the information that you have on hand, and hopefully the fire department will be there and they can at least do the air monitoring. They may be able to assist in other efforts as well, but they're your public safety agency. They may, in fact, be able to notify the California Office of Emergency Services on your behalf, but you have to make that clear in the conversation that you have. Likewise, with the National Response Center, that's the federal notification line. You could be in the position of making that contact. You could direct the boat owner, if they're present, to make that contact because they're the ones that are legally liable to do so. Or you can do that on their behalf because you want to get things in motion. When it says marina, we're talking about if you're the marina operator, you want to let other marina operators in the vicinity know because they may need to take protective measures for their own berthers. And then contractors. In that emergency plan, what's vital is to have a contact for a contractor to do the heavier duty cleanup. Okay. It doesn't have to be a full-on oil spill response organization. It can be a smaller organization, but somebody that has the capability at least of disposing of the oiled materials when those are recovered. When we talk about containment, okay, if it's a spill and it's a small spill, let's keep it a small spill. Don't let it get to the point like you saw in the video where it spreads across the entire estuary and affects nearby facilities. The boom that you see in the photograph that's up now, the yellow stuff is what we call barrier boom, and that can be used to contain the oil within that perimeter, or it can be used to exclude oil from other facilities such as the houseboat community. The white material there, you'll notice, is an absorbent material. It soaks up oil, but it doesn't soak up water, so it stays afloat and does its job. Those materials, it's important to know, especially the pads, need to be contained within some sort of a perimeter. Otherwise, when the wind and tide come up, they will be everywhere. So the term containment, containing the spill, can mean to keep it in one spot, to keep it localized. It can also be a protective action to contain it outside an area that you're trying to keep unimpacted. Now, the reason you do that is because in a gasoline spill, for instance, if you gather all of the fuel into a confined area, you're aggregating the propagation of vapors in a confined space, and you're just asking for trouble, asking for a possible source of ignition to find its way to those vapors. So gasoline, you want to keep out of areas that you're trying to protect, but you don't want to necessarily confine it. Diesel fuel, like you saw in the video, that was diesel fuel in the helicopter aerial view, that you can contain. It has a much higher flash point, much less volatile, and it does spread out quite a ways before it starts to evaporate. Next, after you've contained or done what you can to isolate the spill area, you can control the spill as best you can, stopping the release. Now, that sometimes on a sunken vessel, that means by plugging the fuel vents. It may be by removing fuel from the fuel tanks to prevent it from entering the waterways. The best way to do that sometimes is by dewatering and raising the boat. But all of that has to be done inside a containment perimeter. Now, here's something really important to know. If a boat owner wants to take steps that seem somewhat unsafe or expose them to contact with the contaminants, that's kind of on them. However, somebody that's being paid to do the work, if you're the employer, such as a marina operator and you're directing marina staff to help out, you have to comply with the OSHA regulations, and that involves training and that involves personal protective equipment. So you're going to want to look into that. Okay. And then, of course, the cleanup. Some of it is to dewater the vessel. If that's what's going to happen, they're going to raise it so that it can be either repaired or removed from the water. And then the decontamination of both the equipment and the vessels, as well as the disposal of materials such as the absorbent materials, rags, any kind of oiled Tyvek suits, the personal protective equipment. And that has to be done properly in accordance with a whole bunch of laws. Vessel considerations, there may be a couple of ways to go. On the left, at the top, you have a vessel that had been converted into a houseboat that obviously sank within the marina. It sat long enough that the integrity of the vessel was compromised and it could not safely be raised and moved out of that slip. So the bottom left photograph shows how it was taken out with an excavator piece by piece. The top right photograph shows a sailboat that had sunk, likewise at a slip. The marina operator was able to get a tarp underneath the vessel to help contain the water and dewater it that way. Different strategy, but that happened to work. Sometimes it takes an awful lot of equipment, which translates into an awful lot of money. The bottom right photograph is a vessel that caught fire, burned at the dock, and then sank. And you see the floating crane and barge that they had to use to remove that from the marina. That translates into an awful lot of money. And this is why the carriage of insurance is so important. If you're a marina operator, we always recommend that you make sure that people toe the line and have the insurance coverage that would allow for pollution response and debris or wreckage removal. Again, with regard to waste management, anything that's recovered, whether it be oily rags, oily absorbents, held off as solid waste like you see in the drums, liquid waste, fuel removed from a vessel, you see in the totes there on the back of the truck. There are a number of regulations at both the federal and state levels and sometimes local laws as well. Make sure that any kind of a contractor that you employ to do this is licensed and certified to perform these functions and comply with a uniform hazardous waste manifest requirement under the EPA regulations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy and let her talk about the Response Equipment Grant Program. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, let's go over the questions, Bob, if you may.
Okay.
So we had first a question from Wendy, who says that she wanted to know the first incident that you show from the news. She wanted to know what time of the morning that happened.
It happened overnight. I was in the wee hours when we got the notification. And of course, the by first light, that first helicopter in the sky was not a police helicopter or the Coast Guard. That happened to be the news helicopter. So I knew it was going to be a media event by the time I arrived. And in fact, it was the resident of the houseboat community, the lady that you saw talking with the reporter, she had been the one to contact the media straight away.
Excellent. Then we have from Mike Calgary, if I'm properly pronouncing your last name, sorry about that. Should a marina or yacht club contain and or have boom gasoline?
So booming gasoline as opposed to containing gasoline. If there's a gasoline spill, that yellow boom that we were talking about, the barrier boom, can be used to divert the gasoline away from an area you'd like to protect. For instance, to keep it from going throughout the marina and impacting all of the boats or finding a source of ignition. But we don't want to corral that gasoline and confine it in a smaller area, concentrating the propagation of vapors. Okay. Right, because of the volatility of gasoline. All it takes is somebody walking along the dock with a cigarette, maybe an unprotected electrical connection, somebody using a grinder while maintaining a boat, something like that. Diesel fuel is a different story because the diesel fuel will spread out farther before it evaporates, and the diesel fuel has a much higher flash point.
Correct. So then we have Jeff Fight who asked about the absorbents, and that question is responded if the fact that they call absorbent material, they're called, Jeff, in different ways, absorbents, but they come in different shapes, like the sausage, what boaters normally call, or marine operators diapers, or the pads or the pillows, among others. Then we have Matt Mariviov, one company that makes the small mats is Peak, so often called Peak mats. They have different styles. Totally, they are as long as they are approved by the state to be used in the in our waters in case of a spill, as long as they are inert, in other words, they don't react, that they are totally approved. So there are many brands there. And of course, we're with the state, we cannot endorse any particular brand, but yes, the ones that are inert, that they don't generate any additional reaction to the water, that only absorb and repel water, those are the ones you want to use. Again,
I would like to bring out, if I may say, there are some products as well that are suited for, let's say, an automobile shop or a machine shop. They look similar. Oftentimes they're blue or gray in color, and they're used to protect floor drains. Depending upon the manufacturer, some of those are not necessarily ideal for use in a water environment because they are designed to absorb oil, but they are not water repellent. So they will absorb water as well and may end up sinking and contributing more to the problem than to the solution.
Excellent. And also remember, for all of our friends who are with the boating facilities, yacht clubs, etc., make sure that you check, please, the handout that we send you about the recommended materials, as well as the toolkit in terms of the length of those materials, depending on the size of your marina and the largest size of your vessel. Yeah, so Ben is saying with Oakland Yacht Club, spots seem to work better in large areas, spot work better in small areas like a bilge. Correct. Those are more like pollution prevention tools, as Bob was saying, for boaters.
On that, I just need to reinforce that if something happens, for instance, while a vessel's refueling and oil gets in the water, these things happen. Okay, an accident is not necessarily an offense. Failure to report the accident, failure to report the spill may be taken as an offense, and you can get a ticket for that. But if it comes down to a handful of pads and they start getting dealt out like a blackjack dealer from Vegas, it's really important to know that the wind and the current will carry those away if they're not in some sort of contained perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
You have to dispose of those.
Great. Okay, so continue to think about more questions in case you are trying to digest all this information, which is great. Again, these are two real case scenarios outside of your facility and inside of a marina. that were brought to you with some real case scenarios, lessons learned, among others. And now we're going to switch gears to talk about the last item in the agenda, but Bob is going to be available for additional questions at the end. And we're going to be now allowing our colleague Cindy Murphy, who's going to be talking about the oil spill response grant and resources for boating facilities. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Bob. So let me just provide a little bit of background about why we implemented the program. After Costco Busan in 2007 in the San Francisco Bay, we realized a lot of the marinas and yacht clubs didn't have the resources to protect their economic sites. And so what came out of that, one of the lessons learned is maybe we can offer a grant program of response equipment for the marinas and yacht clubs to have resources to protect their economic sites. So this is something that came out of Costco Busan. How many people, if you don't mind putting in chat, how many people remember or were part of Costco Busan at the time?
I'll check that chat for you, Cindy.
Thank you.
We're just waiting.
Appreciate that.
So we have Ben from Oakland Yacht Club. We have Vicky from State Lands Commission. Joel said no. We have yes from Constance. So
okay, so we do have some people that remember Costco Busan. That's great. And so out of that, like I mentioned, we had a lot of lessons learned, and this is one of them. So OSPR looked into how we could then offer this grant. And through our local government grant program, we've been doing this program for a good almost 15 years, and we've been offering response equipment grants throughout all 58 counties. And in order to apply for a grant, you have to be adjacent to waters of the state. There has to be, a risk of a petroleum spill, whether off highway, on highway, near, the marine coastline or inland, if there's a lake, river. So that's kind of how we look at for folks that apply for this grant, if there is a real concern for having a spill. And so this really provides the equipment to pre-stage, and that way you're prepared if there is a spill in your area. It seems like my computer has stopped sharing. So let me go ahead and share again for some reason.
no worries.
Yeah. Nothing like technical difficulties. Can you guys see the screen there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. For some reason, it's not letting me. Okay, there it goes. It's just all of a sudden being very slow. All right, so who can apply for a local government response equipment grant? So a city, a county, a port district, fire departments. We love giving these grants to fire departments because they're 24/7, but many marinas, yacht clubs have received some of these trailers with equipment. So California's Native American tribes, that's another stakeholder that we're really focused on. Public utility districts, emergency management departments. So I have another question. So in chat, if you've received one of these response equipment grants, I think I heard that Alameda County might be present today. We might have someone from Marin. So if you've received one of these trailers, go ahead and put it in the chat that you have one. Thank you. So we developed rating criteria. So as I mentioned earlier, are you near waters of the state? Is there immediate threat to a petroleum release? So these are the things that we look at once you apply for a trailer. And I just also want to mention, it is a one-page application. We really want to come out and do a site visit with you. We don't want you spending hours and hours of filling out an application, a 10-page application. So our application process is very simple, should take you about 3 to 5 minutes at the most. And so once we get that application, then we schedule a site visit with you. We go over, once we do that site visit, what sites do you want to protect? Are you near waters of the state? Is there a petroleum threat? So we'll go over all of these, criteria in order to be awarded a response equipment grant. The thing that you have to have is you have to have the ability to deploy the equipment. So that's people and that's boats. I know some people use jet skis. I don't really recommend that because if you're, using a jet ski, and driving driving your jet ski out into where there's petroleum, you might ruin your jet ski. So just something to think about. And also, if you're going to maintain the equipment, because you do own the equipment. So that's also what I want to share with you today is if you are awarded the grant, then you will be also responsible for maintaining the equipment. And funding. Over time, we started off these packages, these response grant packages were about $25,000 when we first started. This kind of gives you an idea of inflation. We're up to now 45,000 starting July 1 of 2023. So the grant value is 45,000. And I already mentioned it's a one-page application. We've distributed about 75 plus of these grants throughout California. And of course, it's based on grant funds, but our funding has been very solid from year to year. What comes in the grant package? I'd like to say that it's not one size fits all. When we come out and do a site visit, we look at the environment that you want to protect. So on our equipment list, we have maybe various sizes of containment boom. Other resources. Maybe you're an inland, trying to protect a narrow river. So maybe that's a water gate, different types of absorbent boom. So this is something that we look at and we provide not only a list, but our recommendations, what makes sense for your area to protect and what does that equipment need to look at. So that's all done sort of when we do the site visit evaluation. The training. So part of the grant that you would receive if awarded is it doesn't just come with, we deliver the trailer and then, you kind of figure out everything. Part of the grant also includes an 8-hour training. So what happens is once you find a vendor that, can provide all these elements, the trailer, all the items that go in the trailer and the training, once it's delivered, that vendor is also responsible for providing an 8-hour training course. It goes over health and safety. It goes over the equipment in the trailer and how it's used. The rest of the time is spent hands-on. So we really want you to pull the boom out, drag it around, do some different configurations. So you have, a pretty good idea of how to utilize the equipment in case there is a spill. So one thing we've, like I mentioned, we've been doing this drill or this grant program for about 15 years. So we've, over the years, we've identified through our grantees, it's like you gave this training to us 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So now what we're doing is we've been going out and providing a refresher boom training. So we just got done with our Butte County Fire Department that we issued a grant trailer to them for about 6 years ago and just conducted a free refresher boom training. So we like doing these refresher boom trainings because we know staff comes and goes, and we want to make sure everyone's trained up on the equipment. This also gives us an opportunity to look at the equipment and to evaluate, is it in good working order? Are you missing anything? And if you are, we're also providing replenish grants. So if, let's say, you're missing, some bridles, or you're missing, 2 of the buoys or what have you, or sorbent materials has pretty much deplenished, we would offer a smaller grant, maybe $3,000 to $5,000 to make sure you can, replenish those items. And that way the trailer is always fully stocked. Those replenish grants are based on available funds. So from year to year, like I said, our funding source has been pretty, we have a really good funding source, I'll just say that. And so towards the end of any fiscal year, we kind of look at, if we have some funds left over, so we can offer these replenish grants. The other thing is, if you don't fit our criteria, let's say you're a private marina, and I've done this with some of our grantees. I say, let's go ahead and, network with maybe the city or maybe the county Office of Emergency Services to get them to apply for the grant on your behalf. Excuse me. Allergy season for me. So we've been able to do that. And I think that's a win-win, because it's great to have these resources in a county where they can be used by all, county departments. And if you're not using the equipment and we have an active spill, then OSPR can use that equipment. And it really just alleviates or hope to alleviate, more environmental damage. So that's kind of how, for the private marina operators, this is how maybe we can kind of work the system a little bit and, get a grant trailer in your marina. So this is just some additional information, some website information about our seed plans, about our Cal Spill Watch. Vivian mentioned that earlier, where you can find a communication packet that Vivian went through, and then just our landing page there. You're also going to find our one-page application on our local government page. So that's, where you can find the one-page application, a little information about our program. And of course, my contact information is on there. So if you have any questions, you can, email me or call me directly. And that wraps things up with the response grant program.
Thank you. Cindy, we have a couple of
Yes, I'm going to grab the chat right now. So
yeah, I'll help you here with the chat. So we have here a couple of questions. So the first one is, how would we initiate the process for doing a refresher boom training for our newer staff?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. All you have to do is reach out to me and I will go ahead and set that up for you. So we send out typically we send out emails like 2-3 times a year and offer refresher boom trainings or refresher grants. So we just sent one out a couple weeks ago. So if maybe the harbor master, maybe that contact information has changed, we also need to update our spreadsheet. So it's always great to, make those contacts with all of our grantees. So yeah, please reach out to me and I'm more than happy to set up a refresher training for you.
Perfect. Then we have 3 more questions, actually. The other ones are, we received this initial training. However, what resources are available for ongoing training for new employees as well as refresher? How do we apply for refresher supplies and training?
Yeah, so you don't have to apply for refresher boom training. All you need to do is reach out to me and I will go ahead and set that up with you. We have, as Bob mentioned, he's an oil spill prevention specialist. So we usually come out and we, collaborate a lot with if it's Marine, we collaborate a lot with our Coast Guard federal partner. And we offer that refresher training, whenever you need it. The replenish grant, now that's based on available funds. So our new fiscal year will start July 1 of this year and it ends June 30th of 2024. So typically we will send out, if we have available funds sometime in January or February and say like, if your, supplies are low, and if we have the available funds, we'll go ahead and help restock the trailer. But yeah, just reach out to me and I can cover, setting up, for refresher boom training. We do that 12 months a year. So it's whenever you need it. We'll work, with your schedule. And then the refresher boom training, the refresher or the replenish grant, we can, reach out. We can discuss that at any time. So feel free to reach out to me directly.
Thank you. Then we have some conversation from our friends who are joining us from Lake Tahoe. Share a link. Thank you. And then let's see what else. Certainly don't see the need for a trailer, but are grants available for nonprofit yacht clubs for basic supplies?
Great. So for nonprofit organizations, I'm sorry, I don't see the question here, but for nonprofit organizations, I would say reach out to me directly and see, if we can, work something out. And I'm pretty creative when I need to be. A lot of times I'll network with maybe, a city or a fire department to see if we could, if they could apply, and then we can share those resources with others.
Perfect.
Like our nonprofit organization. So I just want to mention too, I know I believe Lake Tahoe's on here. We're actually just finishing up a grant with South Lake Tahoe Police Department. So that should be coming in the next couple months. So it'll be good to have a trailer there in Tahoe.
Yeah, thank you. And just to go back to the question about the yacht clubs, remember that the list of recommended resources are also included in the handouts that you receive. Then we have a final question. Is it possible to qualify for a second trailer for larger properties?
Absolutely. We just did a second trailer for Marin County Fire Department. because their AOR is pretty large. And so we just did a second trailer for them. So yes, the answer is yes. Fill out that 1-page application. Once you fill out that 1-page application, we'll schedule a site visit, and then we'll go through all of the process with you as we did before.
Excellent. All right, any other questions? We are ahead of the game, but of course we want you guys to think about the different sections that we cover during the training before we jump into the evaluation form, because this is the best important part of these workshops, is to give you the opportunity to ask questions to the experts, not only about the grants, and you see how Cindy is creative and is inviting our facilities that are private to, find a way to apply for those grants. We also talk about the different case scenarios of spills inside or outside of a marina. And also we talk to you about the toolkit that you have with the goal of making sure that you connect with your county, that you know the resources you have in case there's a spill outside of your marina, so you can follow the trajectory. In addition to that, we also share with you the location of the toolkit, and in the follow-up email you will have in your inbox, you will find all those resources right there. Make sure that you tune up your spill response procedures, your emergency plans, that you share that information with your staff, that you take the proper trainings, that you keep your resources up to date every 6 months to a year. Any questions that you have about the case scenarios that were covered, or that based on your expertise or things that you have lived, we should cover? Right, we got a bunch of questions, and of course in the follow-up email you're going to have our contact information right there, so you can contact us in case you have follow-up questions. We would like is just to assist you, make sure that we all work together in case of a spill. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you never know, accidents happen. You have all the resources with you. So while you guys think about other questions, I'm going to drop in the chat. Again, we're not going to go, but so you guys can start working on your evaluation form. And just think about the questions you have. And Martha, you're asking the question about, do the kits expire or get too old? I'm assuming would be the spill. And Cindy, that's a question probably for you. Like in terms of your grant, you provide some of the absorbents, etc. How often do we have to replenish those kits?
Yeah, so there is a shelf life on the sorbents materials. As long as you have them bagged and secured, they'll last a while. You'll start to notice they'll start to flake, and that's when you need to replace them. But if you keep them in a secured location, a dry location, of course, they're going to be in the trailer, because part of the grant also includes a cargo trailer. So you just want to make sure that it's, that it's in a good dry environment, and that, the bag is enclosed and sealed. If you open a bag, just make sure you double bag it again and seal it. But usually 10 to 15 years, but you'll start to notice it'll start to flake. When we start talking about containment boom, right? It depends on how often you use it, and make sure, when you do decon it, that it's dried out. But usually, containment boom, again, will last a good long time, as long as, you don't have it out in the open, that it's in a dry environment, like a controlled temperature. It'll last a while. It'll last a pretty good, length of time. So, but again, these are all the things that you have to do to maintain the equipment and to keep it in good working order. That's another reason why we like to do the refresher boom trainings with you, because then we can look at your equipment and make sure that, it's still, in good working order. And if we have to replace it, then we can do a replenish grant. So hopefully that answered that question. Thank you. Great question.
Cindy, from Ebony Boat Club, and that question was more because our club is a barge. So
Okay.
we have our own, that's why I asked the question, did we have to have a plan? And in addition to the marina, we have one for our own barge. And that was where that question came from. So
Okay,
it's not like I have a whole marina to worry about. I'm more worried about our little home space. And if I have a leakage that involves that, moving my boat would be easy, but moving the clubhouse or the barge would be a
big, yeah.
And if there was, we're right at the Stockton, new marina. So
Oh, beautiful.
if there was a spill there, I'm looking at how do we protect Ebony? Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
Yeah, I think it
Okay.
does. So Bob, do you want to refer to this question, or probably more in your wheelhouse than mine, but I'll let Bob answer that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so the material that you have on hand, whether it be boom or pads, if you're trying to keep fuel or contaminants out of your portion of the marina, a couple of ways to do it. If it can be led around using a boat hook, without putting somebody in a boat in the water into the fuel, that's one way around it. Either the yellow barrier boom or the absorbent boom, the white sausage boom, could be useful in that kind of a case. The barrier boom is perhaps the preferred method, but with that comes the fact that it's also a little more difficult to manhandle. The white sausage boom is absorbent. It should help protect, but it's a lot easier to maneuver around boats, especially if you have people leading around from, with boat hooks from slip to slip. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, it is, because we're on the far dock of at Weber. And so if there was a spill up or coming down, our concern would be to protect our clubhouse.
Sure.
So it would be how to keep that spill from coming into us while the marina kept it going to wherever they had it going.
Right.
Function.
So yeah, like I was talking about during my presentation, in this case, it's a barrier. It's not necessarily a containment, but it's a deflection or a protecting boom.
Exactly.
Okay. Have I answered your question, or there's something that's okay, great. Glad to be of help.
Proactive there.
You bet. All right, thanks.
Martha is part of the Ebony Yacht Club, and they're always trying for ways to improve operations, which is great. And I hope, Martha, for future workshops, you invite all of your PICYA members, because I think sometimes yacht clubs don't get the fact that they can experience a spill, and it's good to be on the proactive side.
Vivian, with that statement, and I agree with you, I think some of them, especially the last 3 years, have gotten a little lax because we aren't using our equipment as much. We aren't as proactive. Ebony, because we're small and we are self-contained, we fight to keep it good so we don't have to make it better.
Correct. And that's always great. So any other questions? Again, we're super excited to regroup after a couple of years, putting together this workshop with real case scenarios for all of you, connecting you with the experts. We want you to make sure that you find support here, because there's a bunch of resources that sometimes boating facilities don't know that they exist. And that's why we're trying just to open up these channels of communication to make sure that you understand how the state operates, the federal government operates, what resources are in place, and also to brag about a little bit about California. Just remember that we have a fantastic oil spill response structure in place that have been utilized by many other states as an example. So I always want to leave educational opportunities like this with a good note. And also please make sure that you help us with the evaluation form. And again, your inbox will have our contact information plus all the links that you requested. So it's easy for you just to have them there. And if you don't have any other questions, it is 11:57. I want to invite Cindy and Bob to probably stay with the rest of the group for a few more minutes in case shy people like me decided to ask a question without all this big audience. So we will wrap it up by 12. And I appreciate everybody for your time and help. Cindy and Bob, any last words before we wrap it up?
Yeah, Vivian, I'd like to have the OSPR team jump on the call real quick. Maybe if they can turn on their cameras and just introduce themselves. We have quite a few folks from OSPR, and these are our field response folks, and it's good to know who they are and what role they play. I know we went over what our field response team consists of, but I think it's great for them to introduce themselves super quick. So thanks if you can hold on for a few minutes. Maddie, can we start with you?
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. Hi, my name is Maddie, and I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area and work throughout all of Northern California. Mike, I think it's yours. Sorry if we have some feedback. Like I said, I'm an environmental scientist on a Northern Field Response team, and you might see me out doing site familiarization up north, or, of course, responding to spills as needed. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or stop me and say hi if you see me out at your marina.
Thank you, Madison. Jenna, would you like to go?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Driscoll. I'm a senior environmental scientist with OSPR, and I serve as our liaison officer. So it's my responsibility to keep stakeholders informed when we have an incident. So as marinas and yacht clubs, if there was a nearby response, we would try to reach out to you to let you know what was going on. And I normally work very closely with Vivian to get the information out to you. So very grateful for the partnership with her because she knows all of you and can reach out pretty quickly. But we do written liaison updates that keeps people updated about what's going on. And if it was impacting folks, we may also have a meeting, like a virtual meeting for folks to ask questions. So you could get on our email list if you were interested in the response and stay updated that way. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about joining lists and things, but you would probably hear about a response through Vivian and then get added to our list. So thanks for meeting, everybody.
Thank you, Jenna. Cindy, do you have anybody else? David, probably.
David Bell, if he's still with us?
Yes,
I'm still here. Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Nice to see a lot of familiar names and faces here today. I really enjoyed the map or the graphic that you showed, Vivian, with all the different counties that are represented here on this call. So I manage the Northern Environmental Response team. So that would be from Del Norte County down to San Mateo County and then everything inland. We have 7 environmental scientists. They go on call every 7 weeks for a 1-week on call schedule. If you were to have an incident at one of your facilities, one of our ESs would compose the field response team along with our warden and our OSPS to guide and oversee that response. One of the things that we do beyond just doing environmental response for oil spills itself is we do a lot on the planning side. And one of the areas that we provide that planning is in our area contingency plan. And I can post the link in the chat where our area contingency plans are. There are 6 ACPs for California, ACP 1 and 2, which is Humboldt County, and then San Francisco Bay and Delta are the ones that my team oversee and write up the environmental planning to a potential spill. I'll put the link in the chat, and I would urge folks to look at find the site strategy for their particular area. It may not mention the marina exactly, but there will be site strategies for all the areas on the marine side. And then we do also have a geographic response plan for some of our larger river systems in California. So if you have any questions that you get from that ACP, or if you meet one of our ESs in the field during a response, make sure to communicate with them. And if there's anything that we could do to help you, please let me know.
Thank you, David. And in your email, you will have also the link to that resource. So everything will be
Perfect.
in one stop for all of you. Cindy, anybody else from your team? You're muted.
My name is
Mike.
Mike Caligari. I'm Bob's coworker. I work with Cindy on the Grand Trailer boom refresher training. So I'm out of the Northern FRT in Fairfield. We're getting feedback, so if you need anything, everybody knows my number.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And I think that brings us to 12:03. We want to respect everybody's time. Again, please take your time for, thank you, Ben, for filling out the evaluation form. We can keep this project improving as much as possible. We want to make sure that we capture all the information that you want to have in place. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and wait for our follow-up email with all the links as you requested. And that's pretty much it. Thank you. And you have our contact information. So thank you, everybody, for your help and support. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you. And thank you, Cindy and Bob and the entire group. Thank you.